rise up for Sweden national anthem. Please remain silent for Finland national anthem.
Welcome back to the final game of 6 on opening day. Officially, as Sweden and Finland battle in the 2019 Women's European Lacrosse Championship, the Swedes in the blue on blue, white on navy for the Finns. Ralph Benorchik alongside Steffi Samaras, the head coach of the Greek development team, the first Greek team to reach the European Championships. They're playing just in the festival, and Steffi joins me once again as the analyst to wrap up a long day. This is Group C. These are the developmental programs. Here's a shot on the move by Finland that sails wide. Ilona Markkinen was the shooter, and she was off target with Jenny Arkival as the goalie for the Swedes. Just a 16-person roster for the Swedes. They're very much in a, as Coach Marcus Lind felt, that we want to rejuvenate the sport of lacrosse. Sweden goes back to the 90s in terms of competing in the Worlds and the Euros. There was a time where they were at a different level and maybe could blossom, but they had been past for a good decade, and now they are trying to build things up from the ground up.
Yeah, in the late 90s, Sweden's program was probably at the height, and that's probably what they're trying to get back to. We've mentioned a couple of times in 2000, I actually played on a team that played in place of Sweden in the European Championships because they couldn't get the funding to get their team to Scotland. So I'm excited to see, again, we've talked about this whole development phase in the European countries. I'm excited to see this resurgence that their coach is talking about.
Part of it is their youth, like Emma McRae, who just started and the midfield and fed it ahead, just 15 years old and a native of New Jersey originally, then the town of Ridgewood, a long lacrosse hotbed, but moved 5 years ago to Sweden. And she is part Swedish. I believe mom is from Sweden, so McRae has been living there. And the other American is Elizabeth Smith, who had 2 older brothers that played for the Swedish national team, so they were well aware of Elizabeth and her desires to join the Swedish national team someday. She plays currently at Division III Connecticut College in the U.S. So those are a couple of their U.S. connections, but other than that, here is McRae, who got an 8-meter and will have a chance at a free position. But as Marcus Lind felt, since the 90s, they were a strong program, and they want to get back there. They've had the same staff since 2015 together. That can make a big difference, and they're very proud that they're building with natives. McRae, straight up top, and the goalie is Jennifer Riley. I'll tell you her story in just a moment for Finland. That shot, that's off the mask of Riley. And Riley from the state of Massachusetts, she's the lone player that was not born in Finland. As backup went to the Finns, or Suomi as you can see them be referred to in their native language. So the Finns will look for the clear. So here's Jennifer Riley. She moved to Finland 8 years ago. She played high school lacrosse in a good state in Massachusetts, but ended up marrying a man from Finland and moved there. And as her husband joked, well, we've got to find you some friends locally. Why don't you start or get into a lacrosse club? And she did, and she's been a part of the program and very much indoctrinated.
So it goes back to the husband again.
You know what?
Ralph, you're just taking it there every single time.
You know what? Now I'm really starting to brag. As this pass all the way across, sails wide, and the Finns will collect this loose ball and maintain the possession. Drop off there from Tina Hanunen, the captain of the Finns. Sweden with a ground ball in the corner. This one starting 10:20 local time as Anna Olofsson stepped out of bounds. Good ride by Finland, so they'll have it back. And Steffi, that is perhaps a challenge tonight when a game gets started so late. Have you ever played a game this late? And if you're a player, what kind of impact does that have when you're sitting around and all of the heat?
I would rather play at 6 o'clock in the morning.
I think you would agree at 5 a.m. you would play.
I would, and it's one of those things where, not that I want to get the game over with, but now these two teams have literally spent the entire day probably inside to not be in the heat, and probably bored out of their mind because all they want to do is play their first game. So I really commend, regardless of what happens in this game, I commend both of these teams for sort of like taking one for the team and being the last game of the night.
Yep, someone had to play at 10:20, and almost every night there will be teams that play at 10 o'clock. So the Finns and the Swedes are not going to be in this boat by themselves, as Fanny Sutella came up with an interception. And it's Sutella who starts in the attack for the Finns, and catching up with Finnish coach Sinikka Ijas, who played going back to the 2011 World Championships, 2013 Euros, and has been a member of the coaching staff ever since. Jenny Arkival will look for the clear. Finland will shut everybody else off.
So this is a completely different ride than we've seen almost all day. Finland is going into a man-to-man ride, and look how far out Sweden's goalie is.
And she tried to rope the pass down the middle, knock away by Finland. And then the foul committed as Anna Pertola got a stick on it.
And if you notice, off that restart right there, almost the entire team from both teams are within their strain line. That's definitely youth in this sport. Something that the coaches will want to develop, as we saw in the last game from both Australia and the Czech Republic. When either team was riding the ball, the field was not only spread from a width standpoint, but it was also spread from a length standpoint.
The clear from Lovisa Stadelman. Tall, young player, 6'3". Laid back behind, Sarah Bjork, starter on the attack for the Swedes. Along with Natalie Aranda and Anna Clara Nielsen. The flag is out as Sarah Bjork tried to turn and get to her strong left hand. Free position for the Swedes. We are still scoreless nearly midway through this opening quarter. Two teams in Group C, along with Spain and the Czech Republic. We'll get to the Czech Republic later because they just dazzled us in the previous game. And we got a chance to chat with the coach of Austria a little while ago, and Mike Perez. There's a foul out as the flag is out. Sarah Bjork likely will go back to the free position. But in Group C, these are the developmental teams, so they are playing for the top spot, which would be 13th place. Trying to get the best seeding and go from there. Or rather, it's Lovisa Stadelman. Or as the Swedish say, as Marcus Lind says, it's actually pronounced, or should be pronounced, Stadelman. So Stadelman shoots off target. Now the shot got away from her. That's wide of Jennifer Riley. No backup. Or correction, rather, it is backed up by the Swedes and into the stick of Aranda. Finland opening up in a man-to-man look. The Finns happy to be back in a national tournament after they did not participate in the 2017 World Championships. They had funding issues and participation. They were in the 2015 Euros where they finished 11th. That was in Czech Republic. Coming across, Sarah Bjork couldn't slam it in. And a scrum inside the 8-meter vying for the ground ball. And it is Finland. And out of a pile of people, the Finns look for transition. Space outside, and the shot is hit. A shot on the move, and Finland strikes first. It's Ann Ala Krakola.
So interestingly, on defense, Finland was actually in a zone defense, and I would call it almost a traditional zone defense, unlike some of that we see now, which are more of a backer form. And that is a type of defense that offensively, instead of attacking the actual defender herself when they're playing man-to-man, in a traditional zone, the attack actually wants to attack the seams of the defense, which is in between two defenders. So you're going to look for Sweden to beat this zone defense by sending an initial cutter through 2 defenders, and then either having the ball or the second cutter, the free cutter, come right behind that initial cutter.
Stadelman collects the draw control for the Swedes. 1-0 Finland. And those are really elaborate nuances you discussed. There's a nice cross-cage pass. Sarah Bjork locates a cutter. And the Swedes right back with a goal.
And this is one of those issues with the zone. If you are not in your zone, and only a couple of people are, and a couple of people are still in the man-to-man, because in your ride, you're in a man-to-man until everybody calls that they're in the zone, and you have half people playing the zone and half of people playing man-to-man. Instant like this can happen, where Sweden's able to get that free pass in to the open cutter.
Anna Clara Nilsson, the beneficiary. Good pass and good work by Sarah Bjork of Sweden. So we're tied at 1. Stadelman will take the majority of the draws with her height. Inka Ulaska, 22 years old, the youngest Finn. In on the draw circle, and it belongs to the Finns. Ulaska. Ulaska with her older sister, Ida Ulaska, also on the team. You've had a lot of sisters in this tournament, but how much fun it is because you get to participate in a once-in-a-lifetime event like this together.
And not only that, a lot of these sisters, especially the American ones, a lot of them have enough time spaced in between that they've never actually played together before. So this is a first for a lot of them.
Yeah, I'm not sure how old Ida Ulaska is.
We have a pair of sisters on the Greek team, Katie Karahalis and Daphne. And Katie is going to be a senior at USC, and her sister is going to be a senior in high school and is committed to play at West Point. And this is the first time they've ever played lacrosse together.
Really? Well, it depends on what state you come from. If you're a 7th grader, you can play in New York with seniors, but there are other states that prohibit that, such as New Jersey, no junior high players. So no matter how talented you could be, an uber women's soccer player or a girls lacrosse player, you still got to wait to make the varsity.
Definitely.
Free position chance for Bim Bjoysen. Bjoysen's 6'4". She'll play off the bench as an attacker. And she is a veterinarian in Sweden. And now is a goal scorer. Gives the Swedes the lead. Bim Bjoysen, 2-1 Sweden.
Not many times you get to say that she's 6'4", and you're talking about a women's lacrosse player.
Timeout for Finland. So Bim Bjoysen celebrates that one. The Swedes with a couple of tall draw controllers. Bjoysen, though, the tallest, 6'4". And the Swedes celebrate, only just 16 on their roster. But more about the Swede situation as head coach Marcus Lind was an assistant coach beginning in 2015 and then elevated to be the head coach soon after that. He spent 10 years playing for the Swedish national team, 2008 through last year, 2018, before, at least for the moment, giving it up. And he's very prideful that they've had the same coaching staff together since 2015, and they're just trying to gain more and more interest from young players. He's happy with the progress and just the little things that have happened where they have a one-time-a-month camp that's been going on for over a year that they've had excellent participation from. Despite the long distances, Sweden, north to south, is kind of a long country that is spread out there. So that's one of their challenges. And then the structure that's finally in place for the junior level teams. Now they have the first ever, just in the last year, Steffi, their first junior tournament. So the different cities that have junior teams now are playing against one another. So it's become a little bit more organized. So that foundation has been set in place, and the baby steps for long-term success, the word he uses, sustained. For sustained success, there are some building blocks that have been put in place in cement.
And I love what these coaching staffs are doing of these developing countries. I understand the growing pains and the different things that each country could potentially impose on the growth of the sport, but a lot of these coaches understand that this isn't a foot race to the end. It's about
a marathon.
Yeah, it's about sustaining and longevity, and what are we going to do with this program, because at some point there are going to be more teams that add, and if they can show what they've done in their countries, really it's about growing the sport across the world.
And I'll add this point, the Swedish national women's soccer team just had a breakthrough as here's a sweep across Olaska, and Inko Olaska, excellent defense played by Malin Kusinen, who works as an engineer and these next 2 weeks is working as a starting defender for Sweden. And the Swedish women's soccer team winning third place in the Women's World Cup. Good dodge from the outside, and Ala Krakola. She's got both for the Finns. We're tied at 2.
Yeah, you start to see when certain teams from certain countries rise, what can happen to the rest of their national teams, and the support that they can get.
And particularly women's sports, because let's face it, when a women's sports team can have a breakthrough, you have more and more girls interested in athletics.
Yeah, and it starts to sort of send this great little vibe through the country. And I think regardless of the sport, supporting sports in general for women is a huge reason why I am still in the sport of women's lacrosse.
And the Swedes' breakthrough, I don't think just was reaching the semifinals. They had lost a very tough game, a very competitive game to the Netherlands. The Netherlands eventually lost to the U.S. And here's a shot on the move, low to low, Fanny Sutella, and she could not convert it. Jenny Arkival, I think, made the save. Back behind, Ala Krakola, and the flag is out as she looked to crease roll, and she's called for either a charge or in the crease. However, our 2 officials are going to gather. Let's see what the call is. It appeared one official had the foul, the other official had in the crease. And that's going to lead to a throw.
So this is really interesting, the offsetting fouls. This is something that we don't do in the U.S. anymore. This is a possession game now in the U.S., alternating possessions.
Just like college basketball, the alternating arrow. Well, quicker to the jump, Ala Krakola. Ala Krakola shoots it kind of over her head and shoulder. Not many instructional videos, I think, to show you how to do that, but Ala Krakola has got all 3 for the Finns.
So we'll see if Sweden can make the change here with all 3 goals coming from the same Finnish player. What Sweden can do defensively. And we've a couple of times we've talked about Germany's height. We've talked about the height from Camilla Hayes. We've just mentioned that there is a 6'4" player for Sweden, and I'm looking across the field for Sweden, and I'm seeing probably 2 or 3 other girls who are probably over 6 feet tall. Is their height something that they're going to use to their advantage?
The goal happened in the final couple of seconds. The Finns captured the draw control, but that's the end of the first quarter. 3-2 Finland. Will they reach the height of being just ahead of the Swedes here as we go to quarter number 2 in the finale of this first full day of the 2019 Women's European Lacrosse Championship, as you watch tonight on YouTube. And the Finns, similar to Sweden's coach Marcus Lind, head coach Sinikka Ihas was particularly proud as she explained to me that for the first time, the entire Finnish staff is from Finland. They had never had that before. So 2 assistant coaches and the head coach are there, and I do want to shout out Sinikka and wish her well because she is 5 months pregnant. She is due in October,
Been there, done that.
So, Steffi, I was wondering about that, and Seneca was adamant that she did not want to give up this opportunity, no matter how uncomfortable it could be with the grinding schedule that this 10-day tournament requires for any human, much less one that is 5 months pregnant.
You know, it's interesting. I got to coach through 3 pregnancies. I have 3 amazing daughters. I was a little bit crazy because I have a 7, 6, and 5-year-old. All hopeful elexers. If they don't want to play lacrosse, that's fine as well. But coaching while you're pregnant, it's interesting. Sometimes you want to give your players a kick in the butt, and sometimes your baby will give you a kick in the gut. So, you know, I think it's something that it's a whole other element that can bring together a team as they're part of something. And it's a, you know, I've learned stuff like this it's a great story. I don't suggest playing while pregnant. I tried that once. Didn't work out too well for just my body in general. But it's fun to see, again, we've talked a lot about commitment. We talked about player commitment, and now we've moved on to sort of coach commitment and making sure she wants to be here for her team. Again, this is one of those things where I just absolutely applaud the loyalty that these players and these staffs have to their country. It's absolutely amazing. We can all come together in this one event, and yes, it is about winning this event, but it's so much more than that.
And I think when you look back on it in the 50 years, yeah, these names may not be remembered, but they're going to be a big part of something. And inherently they may know that, maybe not openly. So it makes it such a fantastic event. 16 teams were able to put together all the necessary logistics and finances that it costs to be here. As we get the draw control, Lovisa Stadelman, 12 in blue for Sweden. And it looks like the foul was committed out of the circle. So here's Tina Hanunen, 37 years old. She works in DNA analysis and only picked up the sport 7 years ago. Here's Tina, the main captain, who at one time reached the 2nd division of Finnish women's basketball in the club circuit. She was knocking on the door towards something really special before switching to lacrosse.
That's another theme that we've seen is especially in these countries that are working on the development aspect, these other sports that they're tapping into, whether it's the coaches actually seeking out athletes from other sports or athletes becoming interested in the sport of lacrosse that are currently playing other sports.
Free position here in the right wing for 23, Sofia Tatinen. As Tatinen shoots, falling away a bit, and that shot is off target. Jenny Arkival seemed like she had a good beat on it. And Finland will have backup. And I talked with Marcus Lind just about that, what's really hurt them in that it's actually more of the it's not necessarily other sports that have hurt them. There's a shot and it's finished. Arkival saw it, but just got caught maybe a little too deep in the crown of her spot. And there's Tina Hanunen that we just touched on. 4-2 Finland.
I will say that was actually quite well defended by Sweden, and unfortunately, I think it was a screen. I think the defender screened her own goalie because the shot came within seconds after the catch, and it was a full body turn onto the cage.
Hanunen has her first after Ann Alla Krakola got the first 3 for the Finns. Did we get offsides across the restraining line? And yes, we did against Finland, our officials point to. Oh, now she'll actually reverse the call. It's late at night for the officials, too. So they've been out in the heat, and it will be Finland ball. So the restart for the Finns, Ala Krakola is slowed down momentarily before she continues to go at it. Angelika Carlson is trying to handle her, starting defender for the Swedes. And then the bump against Elizabeth Smith, just outside the 8-meter, maybe a half yard off for Tina Pannanen. Pannanen, a one-time hockey player in her youth until her mid-teens. And Hannanen shot and it was deflected and past Archibald. Elizabeth Smith got almost all of it on the swarming defense, but could not stop the shots. 5-2 Finland.
We had this happen earlier today with one of the hard shots being deflected by the defender and it going in the cage. And again, that happens. Sweden's response to that is going to be the most important thing.
It's got to start with a draw, and they'll put in an older player, Anna Clara Nielsen, instead of Stadelman. Fanny Sutela, the draw for Finland. Well, Sinikka Ihas of Finland felt this is a team mix of older players and younger players. That there's a good chunk on both sides. But they have players that go back to the 2013 World Cup, so they have players that are working on a decade plus of lacrosse in the Finnish system and the U19 team. Finland actually went through a period where they did not have a U19 team at all. There's a lefty drive. And the Finns right now getting the shots they want. Fanny Sutela, 6-2.
This is a time when Sweden's got to, again, I think we touched on this in the Austria-Czech Republic game. You just need to breathe. I don't think they're making any major mistakes defensively, but there's no help on that drive. And we see a timeout by Sweden.
Yeah, Marcus Lind wants to discuss things. And Marcus described that their greatest area of improvement right now for Sweden this week is game IQ in situations. They have a real lack of games, the funding it takes place to get into those tournaments, such as Latvia had and some others, and they're just not every country in Europe plays the sport. Game IQ and the lack of game situations and that speed of which they have to make those decisions, he feels that is their area of improvement, that they're going to grow from each passing quarter to be able to handle that, because while they get together, it's mostly skill work, 6-on-6 kind of half-field settings, but there's nothing quite like this in playing games.
It's interesting, you talk about game IQ, and my brain instantly goes to lax IQ is what we constantly talk about. And where is your lax IQ? And a lot of that has to do with sort of the sense when you're in the unit play and decision making. And you talked about speed at which you need to make decisions, knowing or anticipating what your teammates around you might do. And we like to call it thinking 2 or 3 plays ahead. And I think game IQ is very similar to lax IQ. It's more of just the experience and playing in the bigger games and playing in those situations. I like to call it sometimes back pocket playing. You know, you have all this experience that you can store in your back pocket, and when you get into one of those situations, you can pull that experience out and say, okay, what did I do in this situation that was similar? Did it work? Did it not work? And you get to make those decisions in a split second.
Alona Markkanen, she knew what to do there as she scooped the ground ball. And back up on the shot, keeps it with the Finns. 6-2 is the advantage after we were tied at 2 late in the opening quarter. And of course, the lack of practice time you get, you have to pick and choose what to prioritize. And game situations can take a backseat. And the other area is, Steffi, that players such as these programs can hang and watch other teams play to see what they do in situations, and also on TV or the internet, which is so valuable because you see the higher levels do something, so you're mentally aware of it, but then these players get to see it in person, as most teams will at least hang out and scout their next opponents, so they can get a double dose of lacrosse IQ when they're here.
Yeah,
Intercepted pass.
It's been great to hear a lot of the coaching staffs talk about not only the video, but scouting reports and game plans and breaking down film. I think that you're seeing that now. Some of these coaching staffs will be working extra late until the night because of the turnaround of a potential game tomorrow, depending on how their schedule is set up.
Fani Sutella, she came up with the interception and now dumps it down low off the restart. Then firing and getting a good topside look was Inka Olaska for Finland. She does collect backup.
Finland's doing a great job of getting some shots on cage, but the only thing I would like to see them change is actually turning their hips to cage. They've shot wide probably 5 or 6 times, and I think it's because they actually haven't been able to get their hips turned to cage, especially on the crease roll.
That's Ala Krokola, who has shot the ball well herself, but she misses there. With the 8-meter opened up and trying to speed and sprint dodge was Essi Ruhiainen for the Finns. Ruhiainen, as the Finnish players told me, that would probably be the hardest name to pronounce. So I got it nicely phonetically spelled out. There's a long distance shot. And Jenny Arkival to save. Arkival then fires a strike down the middle. Anna Clara Nielsen. However, the second pass is in at a stick, and Audi Salvinen, who is a mom with 2 kids, came up in the Finnish basketball system playing club before switching to lacrosse. And the Swedes with a heavy ride there. Sarah Bjork commits the foul. Finland leading 6-2 midway through this second quarter. They led 3-2 after 1. But a pass to the corner, and the Finns with an unforced turnover.
So the ride is definitely an area where you can see the breakdown and probably the need for development. The difference between the last game, both Austria and Czech Republic had pretty prioritized rides. That was something that they clearly had focused on in practice. And I would say that for Sweden and Finland, their offense and defense is probably something that they prioritized a little bit more than necessarily their ride. As you can see, the clumping that happens in both of their rides.
Yep, that congestion. Outside, as the Swedes turn it over. And Finland, unforced turnover. Perhaps this ball will eventually cross the end line. This turf, while normally turf will speed the ball up, this is a very nicely defined turf. Has to be within a year or so because it's decently thick, and the players, I think, are very happy with it.
Yeah, no turf burn.
It's a 5-goal run by Finland. Can the Swedes get one back before the half? Sarah Bjork.
Interesting what Finland's goalie is doing when the ball is behind cage. I don't know if we've seen a goalie be that big with the use of her stick, and maybe that is to compensate for the height of Sweden.
To knock down passes, you're saying. There's Bjork shooting, but she shoots it low, beating Jennifer Riley. And Sweden does get one late here in the second quarter. 6-3, Bjork on the goal.
Being aware of their height is something you have to take into consideration. And Finland's not a small team, but Sweden is just that tall.
Yeah, two players that really stand out with Beam Boysen at 6'4", and the young Lovisa Stadelman also in the 6'3" range. Stadelman right now inside the draw circle in front of you. And then Sarah Bjork, a tall attacker that can feed and is a lefty. He played at the restraining line, and however, who stepped over, and it was the Finns that stepped over. Or check that. No, it was the Swedes. Racing across there was Ida Ulaska, and a loose ball just inside the crease. Archibald, I think, couldn't find it, but we had a foul inside.
This is another area of development, I would say, for both programs. You see these large clumps that get created when the ball hits the ground, because really they haven't been taught to probably pick up a clean ground ball. Finland is doing a lot of one-handed ground ball pickups, and when they play against the high-level teams, that's going to be something that the other teams really make them pay for. It's really important. A ground ball is something that anybody can get, but proper hand placement actually on your stick is really important. Some girls can get low to the ground and choke up on their stick. Some girls want to stand tall and keep their stride moving to be able to pick up the ball.
There's a fading away shot, kind of low to high, shooting from the hip, was Ida Parakule.
We used to use the football, the whatever the machine is that the boys push, and it was enough space for us to get
the blocking sled.
The blocking sled. There was enough space to put a ground ball in between the two blockers, and we would have to bend down to pick up the ground ball. And if you stood up at the wrong time, your back got killed by the top of the sled.
That's creative.
Yeah.
And so is this shot. Coming off the jet sweep to the front, there is Essi Ruhiainen. Essi makes it 7-3 Finland. Ruhiainen able to get to her left hand and top side just enough. Finland has been a little bit cleaner in the middle of the field and had the edge in possessions. Stadelman again for Sweden against Fanny Sutella. Sutella, self-draw.
I think that's the first time we've seen a self-draw.
In a long time, maybe going back to the morning.
Yeah, yeah. I think probably England.
Ilona Markkinen. Now Sweden applies some pressure. And Finland with a much more open offense. Might be the final possession of the half. 7-3 is the lead for Finland.
I think you see there a case of the clock situation. I wonder if Finland knew how much time was left on the clock.
Unfortunately, it did not appear that way. But it is the end of the first half. 7-3 Finland. Sweden has done just enough to hang around. We'll be back in 15 minutes to bring you the third quarter from the 2019 Women's European Lacrosse Championship from Netanya, Israel. Finland in the lead over Sweden in this final game of the first marathon of this 10-day 2019 European Women's Lacrosse Championship. And the Finns get the quick look from Inka Olaska wide, as Olaska has been an aggressive attacking player in the attack, and their youngest too, a building block, just 22 years old for the Finns. And they have backup and carry behind. For Team Sweden, Marcus Lind, well, it is a developing program, just 16 total players in the roster. As we touched on, Steffi, in the first part of their appearance here in the European Championships, and we talked in the second quarter, their lack of game experience. What do you think he particularly emphasized with all the different areas he could critique?
I think, first of all, defensively, and you can see it right now, we talked about game IQ, we talked about lax IQ. In this particular situation, a lot of the Swedish defenders who are off ball actually have their back to the ball carrier. I think you can see up top there. And they're not open. You know, we say a lot of times defensively, you need to make a triangle. You're one corner of the triangle, the ball is one corner of the triangle, and the girl that you're guarding is the other corner. And a lot of times they're not setting up so they can see their girl and the ball at the same time. And that's how Finland is able to come up with a bunch of these back doors.
And now the Finns come up with a takeaway after Inka Olaska's shot off the free position was stopped by Jenny Arkival. And clears, as we've seen, clears can be something that's a huge disparity in the developing countries, and perhaps maybe one of the last areas of development as a team and program are consistent, successful clears.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time you think about the sport of lacrosse, you got to develop your offense, you got to develop your defense, and it's only been recently, probably in the past 6 or 7 years, that this focus on the ride or the focus on the smooth transition passes has come into play, and a lot of that's been the restraint line, out of bounds. In the U.S., it's the shot clock. All of these things have come into play that have heightened the importance of those two aspects of the game.
And like high school football coaches will talk about, or even NFL coaches will say, you only have a limited amount of time. Special teams usually get sacrificed. And for developing teams, clearing the ball looks like that could be that area that can get sacrificed, or it's the next level that you eventually get to in the pyramid of building a team and a national program.
Yeah, and you don't want to say that you necessarily forget to develop those areas, but you're so focused on developing the other areas that you get out to a game and you're like, wow, now I have to connect the dots. and we haven't really worked on that. We've worked, and you think it's going to translate. You think that playing defense is going to translate to the ride, and you think that being able to catch and throw in the offensive end is going to translate to being able to transition the ball, but it actually doesn't. Those are things now that, certain programs, as we saw from the Czech Republic earlier, I wouldn't be surprised if after this tournament, if they continue to play the way they do, they might be one of those countries that's known for their ride.
And you can cause some real damage to programs in the middle of the pack, and maybe even hurt some of the top dogs like England with a ride that effective. We were so impressed with how speedy the Czech Republic team is. Had a good conversation about them actually with Austria head coach Mike Perez, who stopped by to say hello and thank us for all the work, the time that we've spent here. And Mike Perez knows the Czech Republic better than anybody outside the Czech Republic because those are neighboring countries. So due to their proximity, they get to play each other very often. So they know each other inside and out, and the Austrians were still not able to slow down the Czechs. Shot down low. There's a save for Arkival. And she sees the ball down low, moving her stick.
That's
and
really
made the save on Sutella.
That's really exciting to hear that Austria and Czech Republic get to play each other often. I love that. That is something that I don't know if you could say that USA and Canada get to play each other often.
I would
nor
say
choose to play each other often.
Exactly. I would say the U.S. and Canada don't even open each other's emails.
No, they definitely don't.
7-3, early stages, third quarter. Bjork was thinking about the dump right before she collected the pass, so Lovisa Stadelman is able to collect the ball. Pressure back behind. Stadelman.
And you're seeing the same thing that from Sweden that Finland is doing in their offense. That if she can turn the corner with the ball and get her hips to cage, her defense is totally out of position. And I think that's just the next level for them. She probably isn't even thinking about going to the cage because they're running a set or they're running a play or they're supposed to be doing something specific.
We had a foul off ball. Sarah Bjork just off the hash mark. And Bjork, to her strong left hand, has a chance to sweep across. Can Sweden get the first goal of the third quarter? They had climbed within 6-3 late in the second. Here's Greeter Torstensen shooting, and that one may have carammed there off the mask of Jennifer Riley. Just the way the sound of it seemed a little awkward, but Riley keeps it out of the net. The clear for the Finns. They push numbers. And it comes for Ida Ulaska. And Ida Ulaska back for Tina Hanunen. Then the shot off target. Back up. Stays with the Finns.
So the biggest difference in transitions that I've seen out of these two teams than the majority of the other teams here is they've got to run the ball. They haven't developed that sort of pass to a fast break or a slow break, unlike most of the other countries here.
Yeah, they seem much more comfortable 6-on-6. There's a shot from the angle, actually not much of an angle, and Argival easy save. As a shot might have been forced by Ida Perakul for Finland. But a bad pass, failed clear. Here come the Finns as they push in a 2-on-1. And the shot, and there's Arkival making her best save, maybe even reaching behind her.
That was a great hold from the Swedish goalie.
Sofia Tantinen was the shooter.
She definitely knows it. That's we've been talking a lot today about momentum changers.
The save on the other end, loose ball outside the crease. Riley could not see. Then the rebound is fired wide by Sweden. And it will go out. The Swedes have backup. as Marcus Lind also mentioned to me, head coach of Sweden, as I hear him in the background, one of the other, as I'll say, pillars in building his program that he has instituted is that that yes, they do have 2 players with U.S. ties or from the United States, in Elizabeth Smith and Emma McRae, but they both understand Swedish, and he has made it a point. There's a turn and shot, nice finish. I'll continue in a moment, but there is Tekla Jackson. Speaking of pillars, there may not be one better than her. Tekla Jackson, 49 years old, a National Park Ranger in Sweden, and Jackson is able to get a goal. 7-4.
Absolutely love it. That was superior ball movement. And again, the defense from Finland is so wrapped up in what their individual player is doing that she was able to sneak through those seams, and Sweden was able to find her for the finish.
Just imagine that as Jackson gets a breather on the bench, and congratulations. Jackson, she was mentioned to us that actually by Mike Perez, who stopped by of Austria. Can you believe that? So she could certainly talk about the glory days, the days where Sweden was especially in the area where Ireland and Wales are competing to be in Group A. And that's what they're trying to get back to and rejuvenate this program. But they're hanging around Finland tonight. 7-4 is our score, midway through the third. Ralph Pinarchik with Steffi Samaras, bringing you the 6th and final game of this day. There are 6 more tomorrow. We don't want to tell you how more there are left, but there are a lot. As Greta Torstensen is on the catch, but we have an off-ball foul against the Finns. So this will give Beam Boyson perhaps some room to feed the crease. In terms of disparity, I mentioned Emma McRae. She's just 15 years old, and with a teammate in a much different tax bracket, we can say. Tekla Jackson looking for a second, stuffed inside. Jenny Riley.
I love that the coaching staffs are taking chance on some youth, and it's great. We've talked a lot about experience, game IQ, lacrosse IQ, and really I give credit to a lot of these coaching staffs. We saw it with Latvia and their 16-year-old. I think one of the other teams had a phenom here. Was that Italy?
Yeah, Italy has a 14-year-old alternate that is learning and soaking all this up.
And then we have this 15-year-old playing in this game. It's a lot of credit to them for picking up the sport and pursuing it, but also a lot of credit to the coaching staffs for saying, hey, we're going to include you in this. We're going to play you on the same team with some really experienced people, so you can basically become this sponge.
Can you put yourself in their shoes? Obviously, you had a very decorated collegiate career. Your family is one of the first families of lacrosse in Annapolis. Can you imagine taking yourself back if you were 15, 16? And what that would be like?
I think it would have been crazy. And I was one of the lucky ones to play with 2 of my sisters in high school. I got to play against both of them in college and guard one of them. And, if I was put in that situation, I can remember going to the U.S. tryout for the World Cup in 2000. And when I got there, there was a disparity between the girls who had been on the prior World Cup team, girls like my sister who were probably going to make the World Cup team that year, and she ended up making the World Cup team that year. And then there was the younger ones that were my age, and I can remember my sister saying to me, she's like, how bad do you want to make this team? And I said, I really want to make this team. And she said, you got to hang out with the girls who've already been there, who've already done that. And I can remember getting into a training group with Kelly Amante Hiller. And I love this girl to death. And she said to me, Steffi, if I'm open, you better give me the ball. And sure enough, when Kelly Amante Hiller or my sister Christy or one of the other greats talk, you do what they say.
Face dodge, Sutella to the 8. Gets the flag out. She was checked across the arm. And Fani Sutella, who's got 1 goal tonight for Finland, will step back to the 8-meter right at the top of the arc. But this is a different situation for some of the younger Swedes because there is so much work to be done as opposed to an established world power like the U.S. But still, they're teenagers. Sutella and the Swedes shut down the free position chance. They collapse well, and Finland will have to earn it. It is still just a 3-goal game. In tight shot and Arkival. I don't know if it would have been on cage or not, but that's a force from the Finns.
You know, you talk about their youth, and it's interesting. From a coaching standpoint, we tend to love youth because they don't know what they don't know. So they can sort of come out here with this grit and this determination that they don't necessarily know what the mistakes are. They don't know if what they're doing is wrong or even right. They just know to play and to play hard. And I really appreciate that out of the youth. We're not seeing it necessarily as much with the different generation, but the girls who are really into this sport, we're seeing it out of them.
Finland and their ride that has caused a lot of congestion on the Swedes forces another turnover. As the pass to the corner, however, as Eris Kotsinas collects the ground ball for the Swedes behind cage. And can the Swedes put some more pressure on as we're in the final, should be the final seconds of the third quarter. 7-4 Finland. We've had just 1 goal scored here, and that is it for the third. Tekla Jackson, National Park Ranger. Been around the Swedish program for an amount of years we don't even want to mention. She gets the goal, and Sweden can be knocking on the door. Can they put a little bit more pressure on the Finns? The fourth quarter will be coming up.
You know, I think it's about shooting for Sweden and not necessarily taking more shots, but taking shots that are on cage. Both teams have had an issue putting shots on cage, but they're getting so many looks. 4 or 5 shots in one possession. When you get to be playing England and Israel and teams of that like, that's not something that's going to happen. So it's really important that the shots that you're taking are quality shots that can be turned into goals.
And we have not seen Anna Ala Krakola be as aggressive. She came out and scored the 2-2 and 3-2 goals. And she's got 3 of the 7 for Finland. And Ala Krakola, I can't recall if I've seen her subbed out, but she has not had much of a quality scoring chance since. And she leads Finland today in goal scoring, but the Finns shut out in the third quarter. Finland will be back on the field coming up on Thursday. They'll have the day off tomorrow. Finland will take on Austria and then take on Spain and then the Czech Republic in their finale. And that'll be the game right before the group stage begins. But based on the way we saw the Czech Republic simply demolish what appears like a solid Austria program, the Czech Republic could be a shoo-in not just for 13th place, but a chance to do some real damage to some established powers in the knockout rounds. That's a real statement.
It's going to be a really fun time to watch them even just grow over this particular event. And if they can continue doing what they're doing as we look to go into the Worlds in 2 years at Towson in the United States, it's going to be really exciting. I hope that they can continue to build and add a little bit, you know, I say add arsenal to what they already have. And if you watch the Czech Republic play in the prior game, you say, how do they do that? There's definitely ways that you could potentially do it, but they seem to be a well-oiled machine right now, and they've only had 1 game in this tournament.
Draw control for Finland. Fani Sutella. The Finns will need to find some more urgency. Should the Swedes get the next goal, they could all of a sudden be very dangerous as a team with nothing to lose. And to realize the longer this game goes, the more dangerous it becomes for the Finns, who are a bit more established. They're certainly a lot older and more physically strong. And Arkival, though, she has been to the task. That was Ann Alakrakola with the shot. She got a decent look. But Jenny Arkival is seeing the ball much better in the second half. Arkival, this has been the problem in the clearing game, and it continues to be. An overpass handled by Audi Salvinen. And Salvinen to the stick of Inka Olaska. And the Swedes hurt themselves after getting the stop.
I think that's the pressure of wanting to score. Sweden's goalie just wanting to get the ball out so they can possess the ball in their offensive end. You know, we talk about the quick clear, but people forget that there needs to be an effective clear as well, and a clear for possession, especially in a game like this. There's only a 3-goal differential. We're in the fourth quarter of the game, and it's a close game. Possession is being taken by both teams. I don't know if it's equal, but it's pretty close, and that's something that's going to be really important. Maybe not in today's game, but we need to learn from that as we go into the next couple of games.
And how Sweden, who doesn't have a lot of game experience, handles this, playing back-to-backs, that is a whole nother ball of wax. So the challenges here in Israel, the European Championships, that's why you put this on your schedule, so you can build and be prepared for these experiences, as Inka Olaska holds. Olaska looks like she could run all day and into the night and maybe even to the morning hours if we're, depending on how long this game goes. There's a shot, and Arkival didn't react with a stick. Perhaps a surprise, and Ilona Markkinen took the shot. Arkival did not attempt to use the stick. She tried to kick it out and missed it. 8-4.
You know, on some of her last saves, it's almost like she's baiting the attacker to shoot stick side high by bringing her stick in and covering her helmet and then stepping very quickly to make the save stick side high. I don't know if Finland is purposely shooting there, but it's almost like she's baiting them to go stick side high.
Well, it's an interesting point, and it wouldn't be the first goalie that we've heard that from. I don't know if you coach it that way, but there are certainly goalies that I've heard that have said that, whether it's going back to hockey, certainly soccer and penalty shootouts, baiting shooters to try to kick maybe to a weaker side of the net. As Emma McRae flips the pass through, looking for Boysen. But Sweden does come up with the draw control, and that last goal feels like a big one. 4-goal lead instead of 3 for the Finns, and the Swedes have had a handful of possessions to try to cut it to 2. Stadelman, as she is bumped from behind.
Sometimes you just fall over. And it is almost midnight, so...
Sweden yesterday, as well as every other nation, visited Jerusalem as the Israeli Lacrosse Foundation put together a tour with tour guides. And a good visit for everybody, and certainly, I think, necessary from a cultural aspect to do something like that from a bonding sense and have it be just a little bit more than just about lacrosse. Boysen.
The significance of what they were experiencing yesterday.
Yeah, you certainly, if you happen to be here, you have to go.
Oh, it's hands down. Hands down. Don't think about it twice.
And a good job by the Israeli Lacrosse Federation not to even make teams have to think about it and just schedule it and put it together to make sure it's part of the curriculum rather than a choice. As this ball Bim Boyson was trying to spin through the crease and could not get there, and the loose ball comes into Jennifer Riley. The outlet for the Finns. We've played about 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. It's a running clock, only stops on timeouts or in the final 30 seconds on any whistle.
You know, one thing we haven't seen yet in any of these games is a full-on stall. I don't necessarily think we're going to see it out of these two teams, but it will be interesting as we progress through this week if any teams bring that tactic into play, especially since there is no shot clock.
And it's 6-on-6. I would counter that. I would think that Division I college coaches would probably tell you that the stall is even more effective when you take one defender off the field. The 6-on-6 stall is easier than the 7-on-7.
And not only that, you have to think. You go to the next step and think, okay, what type? If I'm the team defending in that stall, what are my capabilities of my goalkeeper outside of the crease?
Not many goalies that come up with caused turnovers, we could say.
Yeah. Although I will say that 16-year-old from Latvia,
yes,
she came up with caused turnovers because she ran the ball out of bounds on the shot.
Trying to switch hands there to the split dodge was Tina Pannanen, and she loses it, and the Swedes come up with a ground ball, and there's Lovisa Staloman. And Staloman was trapped along the sideline. And that evolution of goalkeeping, especially now with the ride being such a factor, the better goalies are going to be the ones that can help you in the clear and be more athletic that way. Even if they're a better shot stopper, the more valuable one might be the one that can do those things outside the cage. It's an interesting theory.
Yeah, if you can have a goalkeeper that has stick skills of a field player outside of the crease, prime example of that is back in the late 90s, early 2000s, Sue Heather, the goalkeeper for the U.S. team, actually played on the field as well. She was a good enough field player to make the team as a field player as well, and you could tell in her goalkeeping play that she was that extra person on the field for them.
Well-designed chance for the free position, but Emma Franzen could not finish. She swept across. Jennifer Riley read the play well, but here is Franzen. Able to sneak through. Emma is a fire engineer in Sweden, not a firefighter, a fire engineer, and working in fire prevention and the structure of fire. Bjork, as she dropped it off for Emma McRae, the flag was out. Still 8-4 Finland. Each team with just a goal in the second half. This was a 3-2 lead for the Finns at the end of one quarter. Another big opportunity. Sarah Bjork will have a free position. And Bjork in the near left wing. Bjork, that could not finish it. However, she was checked. She stepped in the crease first as our officials line them up. And it is going to be Finland possession. So Riley on the clear.
Riley's made 3 big saves on Sweden's last 3 possessions.
And now Riley is going to direct. Not a great pass. A good job boxing out, though, by Tina Hannunen.
I love the box out on a ground ball, and she boxed her out so well that she was able to let the ball continue to roll, pick it up, and create it into a somewhat of a fast break.
Just about ready to dart through into the 8-meter was Matilda Martin. Matilda's brother plays for the Finnish men's national team. So Martin is outside on the far left wing. The Swedes will ask Arkival to make another save, but the shot is off cage from Martin.
I wouldn't be surprised if Sweden started to pressure the ball a little bit more and go into a style of defense where they need to actually take the ball away. Ooh, good
Hahnemann.
save.
Oh, what fine feet there to save the ball off the end line. Been really impressed tonight with Tina Hahnemann of Finland, one of their captains. And here's a one-hand scoop from Ida Ulaska. Hahnemann.
At some point, Sweden's going to have to come out to get the ball. And we could potentially see their goalie become a big factor in that.
As the Sweden coaching staff hollers out instructions, we get the foul before the drive from Hahnemann. So she'll be straight up top. Free position. Similar, as they'll say, to a free throw in basketball, but Tina was such a great sport because every time I had a question, she was the team spokesperson and finding more info. And Hahnemann, the spokesperson and delivering the mail. She's got a pair of goals. It's 9-4 Finland with under 5 minutes left. Timeout is taken by Sweden. So Coach Marcus Lind is going to discuss game situation and strategies as he continues to raise the IQ of his program. 9-4 is the score. 4 minutes and change we approximate left in this fourth quarter on this very long day of lacrosse. What stands out to you when you fall asleep tonight, and maybe the most important thing you saw today, or the most important development from day one, or the first full day one?
I think the surprise factor of the Czech Republic, and it's interesting, I didn't pick up on any players or coaches from England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland. So unless they're watching this right now, they probably have no idea what the Czech Republic has done here today. The similarity that we can draw between Israel and the Czech Republic from a pure speed standpoint, and Israel we thought was so dominant last night over Germany, and I would say that the Czech Republic is probably quicker, maybe faster. I think actually Israel probably wins the stronger part of that trio, but they're going to surprise some people, and they're going to be the talk of this first day. The other highlight of today I would probably say is the consistency of England and how well and balanced they were throughout their entire game. Camilla Hayes, is probably going to continue to self-draw and be able to do that consistently. And again, we've been talking about development and ride and stuff like that. You have working your both ends. You have working your ride, working your transition, your goalie being able to clear. And then you still have this sort of cherry on top in the fact that you can have a draw specialist who stays on the field. So a lot of what you see in the United States are these fogos, and that's basically the men's term of face-off, get-off. And we have that same term in the women's game. But in international play, most of these girls stay on the field. They don't get off the field after they've won the draw. They're integral parts in the midfield for their countries. So I think that's going to be a big thing that could play a really important part for England coming down the road. And then last but not least, the just fearless play of Latvia's 16-year-old goalie. She was like a refreshing air that came through the stadium. Everybody was sort of super excited to see her, and I think she's probably the goalie that's played outside of the K's
more than anybody.
More than anybody else.
Davisa Stottleman, and she shoots off target on the free position. Sweden running out of time, trailing 9-4. They feed inside the crease, and our Clara Nielsen could not finish the shot. The Swedes were within 7-4 at the start of the fourth quarter, and actually midway through the third. They had plenty of time to eat into this deficit, but they did lead briefly at 2-1, so they have some moments they can take from this one. Sarah Bjork, as she loses an edge, but Bjork is able to maintain the possession. And Bjork fires it over. McRae. McRae has the flag out. So can this youngster deliver on the free position? As I had the conversation yesterday with Emma coming from Ridgewood, you're born into lacrosse. She takes the crow hop, but then could not finish the shot. Riley the save.
Riley has done a really good job of stepping out to the inside lip of the crease to dramatically decrease the angle on their shots, and she's doing that right at the last second before they take the 8-meter.
And Riley, as we noticed earlier, is a lefty goalie, but her pass falls a little short. Olofsson on the back pedal had the knockdown for Sweden.
And Sweden is now in an all-out ride with their goalie guarding Finland's lowest attacker.
Pass sails through, overpass. Bjork. Sweden needs shots quickly, but that's it. Finland captures their first game 9-4 in the development group, Group C. The Finns advance. They will take on Austria coming up on Tuesday. Jennifer Riley played very well over the last quarter plus, and early very good shooting from Anna Alakrakola, who led the way with 3 goals. Set the tone, and that's enough for the Finns. Captain Tina Hannunen chipped in too. So that's it for us after a very long day. We'll be rejoining you tomorrow once again at 10:40 a.m. for game number 1 of our next set of 6 games from the 2019 Women's European Lacrosse Championship. For my partner, Steffi Samaras, it's a pleasure. My name is Ralph Bednarczyk. Have a good night or a good morning wherever you are, and we'll speak to you from Netanya, Israel tomorrow.
What time is it? Game time.